Welcome back to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored. And I am here today with the skincare queen, Sunday Riley. Welcome. I'm sure everybody out there knows who you are, and I'm so happy to have you on today. First of all, how did you get the name Sunday, for God's sake? I thought that was just the name of your company, and then we met, and I was like, you're actually called Sunday.
You're like, it's real. Yeah. So my dad named me actually. And my dad named me, he said he wanted to, they had me when they were really young. And he said he wanted to give me a name that would be great for business. And even though he was like 20 years old, that's literally the way he was thinking. And that's how I got the name Sunday Riley. Like it's just it's kind of it's been a when I was growing up, no one had unusual names. It was a big deal. Like it was a big point of difference that wasn't actually great necessarily, but as I grew up, it's been
Oh, I think
wonderful.
it's amazing. I've never met anyone else called Sunday. Well, except for the Adams family. There you are. I haven't met and I love it. Absolutely love it. I think it's so cute. It's a attention stopper for sure. So I met you because obviously you have inherited somehow my makeup artist of 9 years. For all of you out there from Ladies of London that still love my bubbles, she's inherited bubbles. Luke.
So actually, that's how I met him. I think that's the great. I love this story. So I watched Ladies of London.
No.
I thought it was a great show. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Loved Ladies of London. Saw Luke as well. Thought I was like, what a great friend he is. Like he looks like just a great friend. So then, like a few years later, I was in New York going to an event, and my team was like, for once, can you just get your makeup done professionally? Because we need like one decent photo, not just like of you doing it yourself. I was like, sure. So I was like, reach out to Luke Henderson and see what his rates are. See if he could do it. Like I think he's in New York, and so they reached out to him. Like it was great. It was within budget. He came to my hotel. And he actually told me like years later, he's like, I was so like afraid you were gonna be such a bitch. He was like, I had this idea, like she's like the CEO. He's like, I was like, oh God, she's gonna be so dry. It's gonna be awful. He came to the hotel. I could tell he was a little bit nervous. I was a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. And we got along so well that I missed my event. So by the time I got to my event, it was already ending and people were leaving. So and ended up we became really good friends. And yeah, now we even work together. So I
And
love him. So that makes me like your de facto friend
I
as
mean,
well. You inherited
by
me too.
osmosis. So
Yes.
basically, Luke has worked for you for gosh, so many years now. Anyway, so that's
Yeah.
how I discovered all your products, and I know you're huge. But as anyone that listened
Yeah.
to me for a long time knows that my skincare routine left a lot to be desired. And there was no skincare routine, I think. Luke used to have to do it to me or for me. And I still do have days where I sleep in my makeup. We have discussed this, and I know you're
Yeah.
revolted. Um, but
No,
I am.
we can still be
We can
close.
still be close. Yes,
It's
it's only,
okay.
and I'm
Yeah.
getting better and better, and you can see my skin's getting better, and I'm taking care of it,
Yeah.
and like I love it. But what I loved about you was when you came over. I love listening to a powerhouse. Like you are so generous and with your time, but your business trajectory over the years has been insane. And I know that you're divorced. Um,
Mhm.
and sort of had struggles in relationships and things like that. And I wanted to ask you, for the women out there, first of all, when did you start Sunday Riley? And do you feel that you've become more and more successful because you had to be?
Yeah, so I started Sunday Riley in 2008, but we really launched in 2009 by the time we got the products made and retailer agreements, which there was only one retailer agreement. It was only three stores. So we almost went bankrupt for like the first 5 years of the business existence. And 100%, I think we were talking about this at one point. I realized pretty early on there was no cavalry, coming to save me. I was always like kind of waiting for someone to like whisk into my life and for everything to be okay. And even today, I think about it with like changing economic, where, like all these different things that are happening. It's like there's no cavalry coming to save you. You got to save yourself, and then sit down and kind of figure out like, okay, if I'm the one that's got to outthink this, like figure out how to get through all these different things. How am I holding myself back? Because ultimately, like, yes, there's like external factors, but ultimately, I hold myself back all the time with different things. Like I was just dealing with something yesterday where with internally with our work, And I was like, trying to figure out like who we work with that's great and who on our team maybe isn't as productive and might be taking advantage of a situation. And then we're like an ATM machine paying people's lifestyles and they're not showing up in the same way. And I was like, how do I end up in that situation where I'm, you know, taking care of people and protecting people who are maybe taking advantage of me? So kind of in that trajectory, you have to kind of deep dive and go, what's my toxic trait in this that's actually holding me back, and constantly reassess. And the minute I think I master one, it turns out I've got so many onion skin layers of things to work on. So I think it's like the trajectories are hard because you constantly have to say like I'm super ambitious, but then how am I holding myself
I
back?
found that a lot, going, if I think back to my days when I had all these employees, exactly the same thing. I think that a lot of the times people only see the power bitch, which is sometimes, by the way, everybody out there, just a mask because we need to, we
Yeah.
weren't born with a business book coming out of our ass. We are
Mm-mm.
doing the best we can, learning every aspect on the way, on the hop, literally. I know that, everyone
Yeah.
beneath us kind of feels that we should know everything, but you don't. And the thing is, and I think instead of helping in situations like this, I went through, different situations in my business. A lot of times people, but when the economy's struggling, they look to you for more, and you're like, I can't give you more. I'm struggling. And I find that a lot of people don't understand, or employees at the time don't understand you're going through exactly what they're going through by trying to save their jobs and keep people where they are at the time. But you don't get the thanks for it a lot of the time. It's really difficult as a business owner out there today.
Well, I think it is. And I think, I always say to people, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. I just reassess and pivot every single day. And maybe the difference between me and someone else is that I don't give up hope and I keep moving forward. So I've got that kind of that grit and that persistence, which helps me. Or maybe it's delusion, I don't know, but either way it helps me. But you're right. So like when like, with a bad economy, let's say, or whatever you want to call the economy, and people say cost of living has increased, I need more money. And I'm like, got it. I totally understand you. But at the same time, our customers are like, actually, we don't have as much money right now. So sales go down a little bit at the same time that tariffs hit. So our cost of goods go up. So it's a really weird dynamic where everyone's kind of coming and saying, like, how can you help me? You absolutely want to help, right? You absolutely want to make it better. You have to make really tough decisions and decide, how is it going to all play out? And then I do think there's a lot of stereotypes where then it's like, well, maybe you're icy, maybe you're cold, maybe you're a bitch, maybe you're this, maybe you're too, so it's a lot of navigating where you have to have really thick skin or just kind of pull yourself out of that narrative, and not really think about it. But I will tell you, you go to bed every single day saying, you know, I don't know how well I did today. I'm going to keep trying tomorrow. But there is no handbook. There's absolutely nothing that there's no there's no playbook that tells you exactly how to navigate it. It's just mindset. And then disconnecting yourself from like the chaos whirlwind that I think comes with any form of leadership in your life, any form, right? It could be a relationship, could be anything. Everything's got this like chaos swirl around it, and you have to step a little bit out of it, otherwise it consumes you. Like to this day, I still can't read social media comments because for me, even if they're positive, I have this like panic attack about what could, just that the chaos. So I literally said to myself, I have to step away from that and have someone else do it for me and reply to it. Because for me, it's so much chaos of what could be in there that I literally have to kind of protect myself and say, yeah, I have to exit the room on this one.
You'd be a terrible housewife.
I know. No, I'd be great because I wouldn't read anything. I'd be
Oh,
fine.
okay.
But I don't read any press. I don't. People like, oh, did you listen to the podcast? Did you read the article? I'm like, I read nothing. I just go in free. I go in vulnerable, and it is what it is. And I don't read anyone's comments on it. All I want to know is if something went bad, recap it for me so we can figure a strategy out of it. But other than that, like, I just live my life, and like you either like me or you don't. You're either on the journey or not, and I totally accept
And
if you're
that's,
not.
that's a wonderful way to be, and a very freeing way to be. I'm very like that. And actually, you just literally described why I'm doing my female retreats right now. Exactly this
Yeah.
reason, to learn to disconnect, to learn to pivot, even if you are sometimes when you're in it, when you've got a whole load of other powerful women around you. You don't have to be in the same business because business is business. It doesn't matter which business it
Hmm.
is. everybody suffers in some way, in the same ways, weirdly, dealing with, yeah,
100%.
dealing with personnel, dealing with all the personalities in the office. It's very hard to keep a successful business today without going a little bit crazy. Do you feel that that has like affected your relationships in time? Do you feel that it changed you? Because I certainly noticed myself, and I see it now because I told you I gave up work for a bit of time when I was sort of
Yeah.
going through my court case and things, and I feel myself now doing all these businesses and coming back, and the power bitch is coming back, but it's not a bitch that's meant to be that nasty. It's just that I'm very short and quick, and people find that
Yeah.
cold and mean, and it's not. It's just direct and fast.
Yeah. So I would say like when it comes to responses, you can either be fire or you can be ice, right? You can either be someone that like screams a lot easily or shuts down and becomes a little bit colder and says like that's a no. My strength is ice. My strength is not fire. If you're going to yell at me, you're probably going to win. So so I'm going to be that person that kind of like shuts down and walks away and just kind of like does my own thing. Absolutely. Have I perfected my ice wall? Absolutely. And it's something that I even work on in my personal life as well because and something that actually Luke and I talk a lot about because he is a good friend and he'll say to me like this relationship or this friendship they're taking like you need to like cut this out. You have to think about why are they coming to you? What do they want from you? Um, it's very transactional. And I'm like, you're right. If I sit with it and I think to myself, is that relationship transactional? I've now actually practiced saying, I have what I call pruning season, where I kind of go through my life about twice a year. And that's like personal and professional, right? And I say, like, okay, who's in my life that I think is like in it for the long haul, right? They're in it to win it, right? We might have ups, we might have downs. That's fine. We can not talk for 5 years. I'm good with that. Like, I can fight with you. I'm good with that. Like, that's okay. As long as we're somehow on the life journey, right? As long as there's a really positive ultimate trajectory, we can have some tumultuous moments. Or are you just here because, again, like I'm some sort of ATM machine? It might be financial, it might be spiritual, it might be energetic, it might be like, time suck, energy vampire, whatever that type of thing is. It might be that you're actually, talking shit about me behind my back all the time, whatever that type of thing is. And I prune it out. And I just kind of I don't tell people like, it's Tuesday, you're being pruned. But what I do is I actively say, I'm absolutely reducing the amount of time, energy, and thought that I give this person. So if they say, like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, great. But I'm not going to be like, let's hang out. Let me tell you all my problems. I want to sit there and, like, I just kind of prune them out of my life. Does it come across as cold? I'm sure it does. Whenever someone says to you all of a sudden, like, I can't, keep this toxicity in my life anymore. Um,
I
yeah,
think
but you
I
got to do
think
it.
that's one of the most important things I did for myself this year and last year. I think I ran around after, getting divorced. And, obviously when you get divorced, I'm sure you've had it where some friends chose him, some chose you, which I'll never understand. Um,
Hmm.
and I think I got to a space when I was here so busy trying to people please and trying to
Yeah.
prove my worth because, I had gone down to sort of rock bottom and, I wasn't myself and I didn't know where I fit anymore because, obviously some people liked Sergio, some people didn't, all of this. And I think the best thing I did when I came out and became successful again is I've done exactly that. I have cut out the noise.
Hmm. So hitting rock bottom is something that I've done a few times in my life in different ways. And it's wonderful in the sense that I mean it's awful by the way, and I don't recommend it. So like let's kind of
I
avoid it if
actually
we can.
do
But
recommend it.
yeah,
I don't think you
yeah,
can
no, I was gonna say
learn unless you do it. You know,
that's what yeah, you're right. I was saying that's what I'm saying in the sense of like I don't love it and I'm not trying to actively pursue it, but I have done it quite a few times. And people do exit. And there have been times I'm thinking this is probably one of the things where I've been lower
mm,
than low. And I would say 50% of people exit the building. Like 50% of people that I knew all of a sudden were unavailable or, just what so it's interesting whenever you have these kind of journeys to see, how that goes. But
I think it's one of
when
the
you do hit
most,
it and you
sorry,
rebuild.
I think it's one of the most powerful growth experiences you can have because you will not allow it to happen again. Once
Hmm.
people cross me, really cross me like that,
Yeah.
you can't come back. And, I'm
Yeah.
getting more and more defined with my boundaries now, which I didn't have before. I used to go, okay, it's just they're getting older and everyone's different. But no, no, you're not. Like, if you're not going to give me the same as I give you, then this isn't working for me.
I think, by the way, I'm switching my drinks I'm switching cups. I'm
What's
switching to
in
hot
there? I was going
water.
to say vodka.
Yeah, it's just straight up vodka. No, it's hot water. I love hot water. I'm cold natured. Um, but I think you mentioned people pleasing, right? And so that's a big deal. I also think for women in general, I think so many of us are people pleasers, not just women, but it's definitely disproportionate. And then the idea of having boundaries, because even when you create a boundary, a lot of people don't like that boundary. And then they kind of push back on it and say, what is this? So I think it's a matter of saying, like, I have a history of people pleasing. I have a history of being empathetic for people's situations. What I do is I justify everything from other people. Like, they're doing this because in 1982, a squirrel jumped from a tree, and now, like this happened, or like this happened in their childhood, and therefore, and I'll justify all of the bad behavior, particularly towards me, in a way so I can kind of practice some sort of like compassion and love for them and try to see the bigger picture. But what ultimately happens there as well is you just keep the door open for behaviors and people that
Don't deserve it.
ultimately hurt you and take from you. And then, by the way, whenever it's over, that relationship is over, they don't really think about you that much except to maybe think of something negative. So it's like I found I have a history of over justifying why people are not great to me and finding a way to kind of understand it and feeling empathetic for it. And then when we do cut ways, it didn't mean anything to them anyhow. And they were so easy to move. So now I do try to practice a boundary and say, like, I get why you're like this. I get that in 1982 a squirrel jumped from a tree. I totally understand that, but this is my
So
boundary, and
do you find the more
not gonna fly.
famous and obviously successful you've become, because obviously, like, you're everywhere, um, you think people have used you for your connections, or do you feel like, because I feel like being a rich, powerful woman in today is, well, I mean, it's quite hard to find a man, number one, because
Yeah.
they're quite intimidated by powerful, rich women, the
Hmm.
right man, or, as you said, or they want you, people come to you because they want you for something, they want a leg up somehow.
So I think it is difficult with men in general. So it doesn't matter, even in a relationship. I think it can be difficult. I mean, I found like maybe I make a reservation on Open Table, so when we go to the restaurant, it's under my name. And I've seen where in a relationship, like that's kind of a big deal. Even I realize that it's not just about my name being on the reservation. It's about what that means to be a powerful woman and how that can actually make the a person like the
But
partner
that
feel if they're not super
Yes,
confident.
if they're not super
Yeah.
confident, because I find that ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I'll always use my name. Obviously, I'm a housewife, and if I want a reservation in New York, that's the only way we're getting one, and quickly. But
Right.
obviously, if we go to a hotel, and sometimes I forget, and I just make the reservation, obviously, and I put my name, and then I do realize that sometimes, of course, that is like taking a man's balls by putting it in
Yeah.
my name and not his, right? Ours.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I travel, like this has actually happened to me. So, and I travel so much for work that it's always
Yeah.
under my name. And so if I'm making like family reservations, it's under my name. I don't really think about it. And I didn't really comprehend how much that would knock someone's
Hmm.
confidence over time. Because to me, it's kind of incomprehensible, to be honest with you. Because it's like, as a woman, you're just supposed to kind of accept that it may or may not be in your name. Your kids may or may not have your last name, all these different, like all these, just you kind of gotta go with it, right? But I didn't realize that by being a powerful woman, how much that can 100% knock the confidence of someone who is not confident in general, just kind of by existing. So it does make it challenging. And then I think you have to kind of sit there and say, well, or what I have to sit there and say to myself is, um, what does that mean for me? Is this something that I need in my life in general? Or like, I have to kind of sit down and kind of dig deep and say, will I find that type of match? Will someone ever not feel? I mean, I remember I was in a relationship and someone said to me, you make me feel like less of a man by existing. And that And I was like, by
That's
existing,
hardcore.
not by, yeah, yeah,
Thank
not
you.
by this or not by the hotel
Yeah.
reservation, not by the restaurant reservation, by
Okay, well, I mean,
existing.
that
And
guy needs to
yeah,
go. But like in
yeah.
general though, I do understand, it is a difficult one to navigate, right? I have a different kind of thing. It's not, obviously again because we go to America or wherever else and I'm more known than he is, but as a couple we're very
Mhm.
very identifiable together. But I run the house. So,
Yeah.
absolutely, I make all the reservations. It wouldn't even occur to me to book a name in Sergio Corello. I can't even say it. Corello. I can't even know his name.
Yeah.
Standing here,
Yeah.
because we don't use it, and he is fine with that. So I wonder if, like,
Hmm.
do you find the power struggle? Do you set it out in the beginning? Because I mean, you're not going to really. I knew I was never going to want a man a lot more successful than me, because I
Hmm.
don't want that life.
Yeah. Well, I think Sergio is really confident, first of all. I think he is who he is. And, he's just like, he's in it to win it, and that's amazing. I think if I was ever, going out and talking to people, yes, I would just where I'm at right now is just I am who I am. I try to make everyone comfortable. I told you I got the people pleaser in me. So I know I'm people pleasing to some extent. So if I make you feel insecure or less of a man by existing, then it's really my existence. And I'm not going to take my existence out of this planet at this point in my life. So I'm going to be there and you can be in the party or you can be out of the party. And I've also come to, I used to say to myself, like, what do I fear more than anything? Right. Besides the things of like, obviously my, health and my kids and I want everyone to be safe and whatever. But beyond that, what do I fear more than anything? And it was not having any security, like not having financial security. I don't want that at all. And then being alone for the rest of my life, like not being in a relationship, being alone. And I thought to myself, well, I can work on the security. Like I can work my ass off. I can keep pivoting. Things may happen. I could lose everything tomorrow, but I can work on rebuilding. So I have control over that to some extent. Relationship, I don't. So I can't make someone fall in love with me. I can't make myself meet someone. I can be out there all the time. I can work on every relationship I have. That's a little bit out of my control. Would I be okay with actually being alone in that way? And I worked on it for a long time to the point where I can say, yeah, I am okay with it now. I actually am okay with it. If that was the trajectory of my life and you said to me from today onwards, that's going to be, but I'm going to have beautiful prosperity, healthy kids, lots of friends, travel, I'd be like, that's great. I'll make it work. And I can make a great life out of that. So I think whenever you kind of look at what's your biggest fear and you sit with it and say, like, but could I live in that fear? Could I actually make a life out of that? And all of a sudden your biggest fear, you're not so afraid of it anymore, then people start to come to you as well. So it's been less of an issue for me in the sense. But yeah, I'm not going to one. I will tell you about a year ago, a woman that I work with. She's great, and we were sitting at dinner together, and it was like a big team dinner, and we had like a couple glasses of wine, and she leaned in and she said to me, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah. And I thought she was going to ask me about work or like a strategy or something. She said, is it lonely to be you? And I said, yeah, it can be. And I was actually really taken aback, like not offended, just actually really moved that she saw
Yeah.
that. And she said, I think about that when I look at
Oh.
you. She said, because you're so smart and you're so capable and you're so whatever. She's like, but I know people maybe approach a friendship for a different reason. Or, and I said, yeah, I said, when I make friends with people I work with, for instance, and they leave and I wish them well. Like, let's say it's wonderful and they get another job or they win the lottery, right? And they move to Bermuda, whatever, something positive. A lot of times they don't necessarily stay in contact because they just saw me as their manager. So even though we were really friendly and I thought of them as friends, to me, like, the reverse wasn't necessarily there. It's not because they're unkind, it's just kind of how they viewed me. And they stayed friends with their coworkers. And, so it can be, and then because of the hours I have to put in to make a successful business or navigate during tumultuous times, I expect people to put in 40 hours, but I may be putting in 80, which means I'm sitting in a room in front of a laptop nonstop where you don't go out and meet people necessarily. And when I do travel, which I travel a lot, you spend a lot of time in a hotel room. So you go to a dinner, but then you go back alone. And so you do spend a lot of your time alone. So that's why I said when it comes back to like what's your biggest fear, I was like, yeah, I can navigate that. Like there is a kind of a cost for everything. And it's about coming to terms with it.
I actually did the same. I always thought about the same. Like, would I be okay on my own? Obviously, because when I started with Sergio, everyone said, well, good luck. He's not going to be there for that. So, I pictured it and I was like, okay, I'm never going to be alone. I've got children. I've got lots of friends. I'll always be okay. And I think, once you do head on, hit those fears, nothing is as scary anymore. And I do think that people don't look at powerful women and think like that. I think that shows so much empathy to look at you like that because, they see the glamour, they see the glitz, they see the plane, they see the
Yeah.
holidays maybe, or I mean, I don't know, probably don't take a holiday, but they
Yeah.
see the glamorous hotels, the parties, but it's work. And you're on the plane all the time. I have one
Yeah.
of my girlfriends runs a huge jean company and, she's got kids. She never sits down. I can't see how she's ever at home. It's nuts to keep up, to be this successful, the stuff that you have to do to maintain yourself at the top. And I don't think people appreciate enough how lonely it can be at the top. We're all trying to get
It,
there.
yeah. It's very lonely, honestly. And so what I now try to practice is, like I said, I can't control who loves you. You can't say like, I know I'm going to make another best friend tomorrow. You can try, you can take like the dance class, you can take whatever, and you hope you meet people. But there's only so much you can control that. So what I can do is I can actually kind of project and give love to people. So if I'm on the airplane and the flight attendant's great, I'm like, hey, and I'll talk to her for like 10 minutes. Or, I try to find like moments of joy and moments of connection with people wherever I can find it. And just kind of, it might be a 2-minute conversation. To them, it might not mean a lot. To me, it means everything because it's that human connection that I actually really feel. And even, and I love it because, and that might be the only human connection that I, get. But, I'm surrounded by, kids, animals.
I was going to say,
I'm trying here.
that's nuts because I bet you people out there listening right now, probably if they, saw you or saw you in an event, they're scared. And that's what happens when you become very successful or famous or well known or anything. When you become the face of your brand, people get frightened. I get so many messages in a day. Sometimes I'll walk around and I go, oh, I wasn't recognized today at all. And and then I get home and I get ding, 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 ding. I was sitting behind you on DM. I was sitting behind you.
Yeah.
I was on the plane. I was here. I wanted to say hi, but I didn't, and I'm like, next time, just say hi. Um, and I think people get scared that you're going to bite their heads
Mhm.
off. And you've just said how much you crave to speak to those people. Uh,
Yeah, so for me, I just did this talk at Shop Talk, and they said, "Do you just want to kind of go out the back door? Because there's some people that want to talk to you who are in the audience." And I was like, "No, I'm super happy to talk to them. First of all, I have nothing else to do after this." So I'm like, "Yes," and I'm here. I flew to Vegas for this, so like, yes, like let's do something. But also for me, it meant a lot to talk to people even for like 10 minutes, and they were like, "Sorry, I know that was really inconvenient." And I was like, "No, like that kind of like filled my battery." Because again, like maybe someone else, like they go home and they've got a like this type of environment, or maybe they're getting flowers from someone, or maybe like they're getting like this supportive text. I may not get that. So that 10 minutes where someone asks me for advice and says they're starting a business, can I tell them about, like a little bit of my journey, or, whatever. I'm like, yeah, I can have this like human moment with you, and I appreciate it. And then I think the pruning comes from whenever you realize that you've brought people into your life and maybe they're just taking from you. So you think you're really getting something beautiful, but they're just in it to kind of take. And then you're like, wait a minute, this is actually unhealthy. Like they're taking a super vulnerability here and using it to kind of feed themselves. And I think that's where you have to kind of cut things. And there are amazing people on the planet who aren't like that, but I definitely have to make sure that I'm kind of protecting that.
oh my God, you might really regret this podcast. I have a feeling you're going to be inundated. Um,
I didn't mind.
inundated with people.
I feel like I'm putting my phone number on the
Literally,
bathroom wall. I'm like, for a friend, call.
literally, I'm going to have to bring you to my women's retreat because everyone leaves these things connected to each other. That was the whole point.
Yeah,
I'm building this amazing network of powerful women, and you need to
yeah,
be in it. I'm going to scoop you
yeah,
up.
done.
Yes, I'm sending it to you. Look, I think it's so inspiring to see somebody, that's humble, that has built, and approachable, that has built such a business, because skincare, especially today,
Yeah.
it's one of the most glamorous places to be. I get every day, when are you going to launch a skincare line? When are you going to
Yeah.
have your own brand? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I think it's probably one of the hardest areas to succeed in. And you have, like, literally, you're everywhere. How did you go from this small bespoke brand to just exploding over? I mean, it seemed like overnight, but clearly it wasn't.
No, oh my gosh, I wish it was overnight. And sometimes I've been in these different conferences where it's like a panel and everyone's talking about their brand. Maybe it's a candle brand, and they're like, oh, I started it. And then it was like the next day we were in every retailer in America. I'm like, that's great. And then they kind of go through, and then it comes to me, and I'm like, yeah, we were almost bankrupt. I almost lost everything. I'm like, it's still painful, but it wasn't easy. And it's one of the biggest questions I get asked is, when I do any sort of like panel discussion is, how did you start the brand? And I'm always happy to answer that. But I'm like, no, the bigger question is like, how do I keep
Yes.
going with it? And like, because that's the harder part. Honestly, starting is easier than you think because we can all make a decision to start something. It's like, how do you keep going during hard times? How do you keep pivoting whenever you think like, okay, we're doing great. We've got like market share. People are using it. There's positive feedback. People are loving it. And all of a sudden there's like 20
Yeah.
new brands. Your clients are like, let me try that. And all of a sudden, like your great growth and people like, yeah, you need to like, how do we stay relevant? So you've got to constantly like stop, reassess. I would say like pencils down, egos down. Like, and you have to say like, the products we have, are they still relevant? Is it what people want? Are they asking for something else? Do we have to spend money a different way? Where are we going to get the money? And you have to kind of, figure that out. So it's like every single day it's a chess game, and every single day the pieces move on the chessboard, and you got to say that you love it. I mean, it's like it's like kind of getting like punched in the face every day, and you got to say, "But I love the taste of blood." So it's not easy um, to kind of be in the game, and it's not easy to stay on top. It's not easy to be anywhere in life, but I do love it, and I do love skincare, but I also just love the idea of when people say to me like that a product made them feel more confident or changed the way they feel about themselves. That just again, it's that human connection that makes me feel really good as an individual, and so it makes me feel connected. So that type of thing is great.
So if you were going to give three pieces of
Mhm.
advice for somebody who wants to launch a product, I guess, even a skincare
Yeah.
in today's world, how would you go about it today, knowing, being how it is? Is there anything you would have changed, that you've learned along the way that you would, you know, tell someone who's launching a product like this? Because, as you said, they're launching every day. I don't know how everyone
Yeah.
stays and keeps, or how you have managed to get such a market share. It's insane. I mean, your products are the only ones I use now, and I absolutely love them.
You look
Thank you.
beautiful. Yeah. So first of all, inventory is typically the biggest problem, right? So like inventory, because you put money into making the product, and then you sell it, but you need the cash in advance to be able to make the next round of inventory. So inventory is always going to be one of your biggest things. So making sure that you don't produce too many products. So don't, if you're starting something, don't start with 100 products because it's going to kill you. It really will. So like start super curated, super tight, and then really make sure that, so that would be one, like don't produce too many different types of products. And then two, make sure you have enough money to launch, because everyone thinks like maybe I need $10, and it's $10,000. Maybe it's 10,000 you think, but it's really a million. So make sure you start with
I
enough
always say
money,
double
or that you
it.
can figure out, yeah, that you can figure out, because it's going to be
You
much
think?
more than you think. And then the third thing is, and this is one of the biggest things I actually really recommend to a lot of women as well, everyone, but particularly women, is really, 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 really check your contracts and everything that you sign. And just assume whenever you sign a contract, I don't care if that's like, a business contract, a loan, a prenup, whatever you're signing in your life, I don't care. Make sure you assume worst case scenario. So if this went wrong, what could this mean? Because that for me, I didn't really look at when I signed a lot of initial contracts, because I was just so grateful for the opportunity that I didn't want to jinx it. I was like, yeah, 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 I'll deal with it tomorrow. So I signed things and said like, great, I'll do this or I'll do this. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, you've got this contract that you've got to start working on rolling back. And it's a lot more expensive, a lot more difficult to say, well, actually, I really did deserve this, but I signed a contract where maybe I didn't really give myself everything that I deserved because I was just so grateful for the opportunity that I didn't actually let myself shine in it. And so you have to renegotiate those things. So I would say to people, make sure, particularly if you're out there promoting it, that you look out for you in it and don't just sit in a place of, everyone says like, be grateful, sit in a place of gratitude. Yes, sit in a place of gratitude, but don't have so much gratitude that you forget to actually protect yourself. And that's a big deal. I think that's a really big deal because that's something that I didn't do was protect myself enough.
I think everyone, when you're starting a business and you're tight with money and things like that, and you get scared, I always say that contract, whatever, have a
Mhm.
proper lawyer. You need a lawyer that is on your side beside you, because having been through exactly what you've said and all different things, you get so excited to sign anything in the beginning and don't really realize that when if you do become an overnight success or a success over 10 years, you have to
Yeah.
live by the words you signed all those years ago. uh,
Well, and I think also people assume like maybe the contract is with friends. Maybe it's with, people that you really trust, and you assume that it's going to keep going like that. Just kind of like when people get married, they assume they're going to stay married, right? But you have to assume worst case scenario at the beginning, which doesn't sound great, doesn't sound fun, sounds a little bit painful. But you absolutely have to do it because maybe you borrowed money from a friend and then later on they decide that this means that they own, 70%. You have to kind of, whatever that might be, whatever your situation might be, you have to assume everything is going to kind of fall apart in that relationship. So if you did, and that could be with a bank, could be with whatever it's with, you have to really, like you said, get an attorney, protect yourself, and make sure it's the right one and that they're really on your side versus just kind of blowing you off. That's something I've also had to navigate is kind of being blown off.
I mean, it's a minefield, but once you do get going, it's one of the most rewarding journeys you can ever go on. And I really wish all the women out there to be able to, have the strength to do something they love, like you are, we are, and it
Hmm.
is one of the most rewarding journeys you can go on.
So I love it. And it's funny, I was talking to a therapist and she said to me, she was like, yeah, I'm not surprised that you're an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, like, why? And I thought she'd be like, you've got this quality and you've got this quality. And it was going to be a very flattering thing. And she's like, you can't take direction from others. I was like, okay. And she was like, this was like really your only life path. And I was like, okay. And she said, but that's great. She's like, the only rules that you
Are your own.
follow are rules that you set yourself. Yeah. And she's like, and then you really follow them until you don't. And she was like, she's like, so it's really clear the type of job that's right for you. And she's like, now you just have to make sure all the other qualities are lined up for that. Which for me they are like ambition, hard work. I can dial up the hard work. I was born with ambition. I was born with confidence. And she's like, and just but dial up the other things and make sure you're dialing down the things that might be holding you back, like you know people pleasing, things like that.
Sunday, this is
I'm trying
you're
out here.
amazing. You're a big icon for me and everyone out there. Um, Tell everyone where they can find you, how they can follow you. Where I mean, you're in every store, but tell them anyway.
Yeah, okay. So you can follow at Sunday Riley, which is pretty easy on all the platforms. And you can find us at Sephora, Ulta, Amazon, Space and K, wherever you're at, you can find us. Just Google it. You can find us.
Thank you, Sunday. That's been amazing. I
Thank
hope
you.
everybody out there is inspired as I am. And thank you for listening to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored.